Hi guys, welcome to Soulfire Studios. Heartbeats.
Heartbeats, yeah.
Heartbeats.
With Gavan and Mijaelle again, okay? This
Michelle,
is
Gavin.
yeah, you know. Okay, so we're gonna be talking about some cool technical stuff, right? Some how-tos. So
Yes, today we're doing how to sum in an analog domain. For those of you who don't know, mixing is a wonderful journey that comprises of many files being mixed down to one file. And now there are many ways to do this. Most of you probably just export your mix down from your DAW. In the olden days, they'd have tape machines, so they'd have one multi-track tape, say 16 channels, that would go through an analog desk, and that would then be recorded onto a 2-channel tape, and that would be your master tape. So the concept of using an analog desk was kind of inherent in music recording and mixing from the very beginning. Nowadays we have these wonderful machines called computers, and they have mixing desks built in. Pretty about their shortcuts. There we go, mixing desks built in, many channels, many options, and what we do is we export our mixdowns through the stereo bus. So most people just use the stereo bus, and they export their WAV file from the multi-track down to 2 tracks, send it off to mastering, or mastering in the box. What I like to do is I like to use a hybrid system, so I'm not working on a large format analog console yet. But I've got a little summing box, and in this case it's my very reliable Dangerous D box, which is a bit of a Swiss Army knife of audio. It's got some monitoring functionality, some summing functionality, some input selection, mono and alt speakers, so speaker selection, talkback to the studio, and some headphone outputs which are really high quality and sound great. It's also got a built-in digital to analog converter, DAC. So we'll talk more about converters as we go through the chain. So what I like to do is use the functionality and the speed and efficiency of the DAW and route the audio out into the analog domain, and then use the EQ and compression on the master bus of, in my case, I've got 2 vintage Siemens V295s and an SPL Cult Tube, which is a nice beefy sounding clean German compressor. Jawohl. So now the first thing we've got to look at when we're dealing with analog summing, and in fact any digital audio, is the sample rate. So I've got my whole system clocked on this little Blackline micro clock Mark II, and it allows me to swap from 44.1 to 48, 96, 192 even, but the D-Box doesn't support 192, and I'm a big fan of 44.1 or 48 depending if it's film or music, using the right converters, because I find high sample rates become difficult to manage, file sizes mainly. Having big hard drives doesn't really help when you've got each song being 20 gigs. It just gets ridiculous when you're working on 20 projects, you know. So you need a RAID array of like 10 terabytes just to manage your audio, and it shouldn't be like that. You're not working on 4K video yet. So the basic concept of analog summing is to take your digital outputs, convert them into analog, more than 2 channels, take those multiple channels and sum them into a mix bus, which will then come out as 2 channels, and then record those 2 channels back into your DAW. And the trick for me is to then take those 2 channels through your DAW and monitor them on the output stage of your DAW as opposed to the input of your summing bus in. Hope it's all clear. It gets a little bit wrangly, but I'll try and show you some connections here on Cubase, and hopefully it'll be a bit more clear. I, as I said, clock everything off my Black Lion card, and I sum it out of the ADAT ports of my RME UFX through the Aurora 8 links. Those 8 channels then travel down a D-pin to a 25-pin D-sub cable to the Dangerous D-Box that has 8 analog inputs. It's got pan on 7 and 8, which I keep panned hard left and right, and I basically use 4 stereo outputs from my Cubase. I split them up into drums, instruments, voices, and effects. I was reading a really interesting article about Michael Brower and how he browerizes things. And he only uses 4 stereo buses as well, and he's one of the top mixing engineers in the world. He just assigns the buses a little bit differently. I'm going to get into browerizing this year as we go along. Basically, so that's my outputs. As you'll notice, I've got a D-Box output, which is not connected because I'm using the monitoring of Cubase, using the monitor output, which also has a control room kind of functionality to it, which is pretty cool. I think there are some other DAWs that have similar setups, but for me, Cubendo or Steinberg is very comprehensive. Oh, I wanted to show you the inputs. Here are the inputs. So this one stereo in is my actual summing input. This was obviously recording some keyboards at some point along the line. So the stereo in comes back on the ADAT. So I'm using the links over ADAT for my inputs and outputs. And I'll just give you a basic thing. So this is a really nice scenario. Being able to folder everything also is quite convenient. Essentially, I subgroup everything as I go. So I've got here, say my drums, I can solo it really easily. There's a subgroup. So I use a great number of subgroups. This is really sounding good. It helps when the volume's down. What I like to do is I like to have folders and groups. And this subgroup here is basically for all the drums. Sometimes I'll group the kicks or snares, put them together in a group so that I can easily access them. And then I'll have it summed in the program to the drum bus, which for my purposes makes it a lot easier to solo, to find and process. I like a bit of processing on the drum bus, as you can see here. Drum bus, a bit of a high pass, a bit of a tape machine, so not too saturated, but just something to give it a bit of vibe. Some heat from Sound Toys, we love that. And the glue, one of the better sounding SSL emulations. Obviously it's doing quite a lot of work on the toms there, but you'll notice that the mix is only 65%. So anyway, that's just getting into the sort of drum bus chain. From this drum bus chain, you'll notice that it goes to the stereo output drums, which in this case is this channel here. Got a bit of a pull take on the bus, bit of extra boops and yaps, some bass and treble, as I like to call it, not often. But then you'll notice that this is now going out, as I aforementioned, ADAT 1 and 2. You'll see the little lights coming up on the Aurora, on the summing. Out of the summing, it goes through my analog EQ, which I can kill and get a really cool distortion, and through the compressor, which is rad as well. And it gives me, like, honestly for me, it's like a nice polished album sound when I do it like that. I can get similar results in the box. They've just released a plugin of the 295, the CQ Sound Toys, and various VBCs and other sort of high-end compressors. So as you can see, we've got these 4 outputs. Let's go with the instruments. That's all the instruments. By the way, Nancy G, great artist. Looking forward to this release. And here's all our effects. Some interesting delay stuff there as well. These 4 channels, 8 channels, 4 stereo channels, are all coming back in on the stereo in here. As you can see, if you wanted to process it, you could do it from there. That's then coming back into the DAW, onto a mix track, which is not only solo defeated, so we've got some solo defeat on the channel itself, not the input channel, the actual physical audio channel that we're going to record on, and its output channel both have solo defeat. Oh, this is a really useful one as well. Project for You time. Oh, I've only been mixing this song for 9 hours. I'm sure I went for dinner during that. But yeah, so some really interesting concepts of analog mixing, and it's a great way to integrate your analog gear into your digital workflow and get more character into your mixes. So I would highly recommend using analog summing for music mixing when there's no time pressure. Thanks guys, enjoy Heartbeats.